This is the Black Information Network Daily Podcast, and I am your host, Ramses Ja. And sometimes the amount of stories that make their way to us means that we simply can't cover everything that comes our way. But from time to time, a story just stays with me, and I feel compelled to share it with you and give you my thoughts. And now, one more thing. A while back on this show, Q, who joins me in the studio today, and I had a conversation about J. Cole bowing out of a battle with Kendrick Lamar. And I was able to share my thoughts on beefs and battles in hip hop. For those that missed that episode, the short version of it is that I'm not a fan of battling and beefs. I mean, I see the appeal and how it brings out some creativity, but overall, I'm not a fan of that aspect of hip hop culture. I live in a fantasy world where everybody can win. And if you do win, you don't need to do so by putting other people down. It just it's inconsistent with my spirit. Now, with that said, I respect it as a part of the culture. It's just not my favorite part. You know, I like it when people get along, and I like it less when they don't. So I had some thoughts about J. Cole bowing out of that battle to protect his peace because he knew that Kendrick was, you know, he didn't really feel any kind of way about Kendrick, and he just needed to get those bars off and, you know, whatever. Well, today we are going to talk about what can happen. Obviously, today's example is both extreme and yet not as extreme as it could be. But what can happen when two rappers decide to battle each other and play into having rap beef? I'll start us off. So I'll share a bit from Newsweek. Rick Ross faced the wrath of Drake's home country Sunday when he was attacked after playing Kendrick Lamar's diss track, Not Like Us, following his Canadian concert. In a video released Monday by TMZ, a group of about 15 men gathered around Ross, 48, after his set at the Ignite Music Festival in Vancouver. "You got a problem?" someone can be heard saying as Lamar's #1 hit, which calls Drake a certified pedophile, blares in the background. Suddenly, a man throws a punch at Ross, although it is difficult to see if he made contact with the hustling rapper. That leads to the group seemingly taking on Ross's entourage as an enormous fight breaks out. The outlet's video also captured several men brutally kicking and punching another man on the ground. Ross reportedly told TMZ that no one from his team suffered any serious injuries from the attack and added, quote, "Vancouver is a beautiful city and he can't wait to go back," end quote. He echoed this statement in an Instagram story pictured in front of his private jet. Adding insult to injury, Drake liked a video of the fight posted to Instagram. So, what we have here is some people on the other side of Canada, the other side of the country. They're not in Drake's, they're not in Toronto, they're in Vancouver. So again, the other side of the country, cornering Rick Ross over a song playing about a man they likely have never met and will never meet. Ross is not on the song. It's Kendrick Lamar's song. And these people have made it personal. Now, one of the guys because I saw the video, and I don't like watching fight videos either. Just, again, it doesn't agree with my spirit. I don't like seeing people get hurt. But one of the guys in the video that was instigating the fight with Rick Ross ended up getting knocked out. He was knocked unconscious, and they had to pick his body up and carry him away. And he was one of the guys starting the fight, right? And I don't want to see that happen either. But what we have is people that aren't really that involved with, you know, Kendrick Lamar wasn't there, Drake wasn't there. And that there's a fight over this. And, you know, when we were first talking about this, I was discussing how rap beefs, because rappers tend to have, you know, a lot of families that they end up supporting. You know, there's a lot of people that help a rapper become a rapper, right? Those people are related to other people. Those people are tied to a community that has a sense of pride surrounding a rapper. Those people feel like if that rapper is attacked in battle, that they're personally attacked. And if they come across someone else from the other crew, then it's the crews battling each other. This is a tale as old as time. And this is what I don't like, because the outpouring of two people having a disagreement, making songs about each other, which in and of itself feels a little silly. But the outpouring of that is that you have people on the ground fighting and sometimes dying over it. So I know that this is something that you read about too. You know, talk to us a bit about, you know, how this one hit you.
Well, first and foremost, I have to echo the biggest boss's sentiment that Vancouver is a beautiful city, and I cannot wait to go back. And hopefully my brother Ramses will get to go with me to see. I've argued for years that if it didn't get so cold, that the entire country of Canada would be overpopulated. And Vancouver and Toronto are both part of the reasons why I say so. Just very, very beautiful, diverse, wonderful cities. So shout out to Van City. Another thing I'd like to point out is that the interesting thing that happens in inflection points like this is conflation of things that have nothing to do with one another. Mm-hmm. Several people in the group that approached Rick Ross can be heard yelling the N-word, and they love to ask us why we always interject race. Well, Exhibit A. So that didn't have anything to do with Drake. Drake's a convenient thing to point at because it happens in Canada, right? And even those guys can kind of co-opt this moment, like they're riding for Drake, right? How silly of Drake to like a video of a group of men calling Rick Ross the N-word and then attacking him, which Kendrick could not have scripted something like that. Mm-hmm. There's a moment where a group of racists, I would assume, if you're using that word in that way, attack a black man and Drake likes it. They not like us playing in the background, like how poetic almost. So I don't think the altercation had anything to do with the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef. It's just a very convenient thing to point to or to lean on when you see your opportunity to be who you really are.
Yeah.
Right? If the idea is that you're riding for Drake, then don't show up as a racist jerk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, you know, the thing that I caught from watching the video, because the fight part on the video, it's so unclear what's happening. It's not really like
Rick Ross wasn't in the fight.
Yeah, somebody swings at him.
Yeah,
what he's drinking like splashes up, so I guess it looks
and then they pulled him away
dramatic,
from the fight,
and then he gets away from it.
Yeah, they pulled him
away.
And
the fact that somebody got really hurt sucks, but slow the whole thing down, zoom out a little bit, and what I get from it is what I started my feedback with: a group of men calling a black man the N-word and a fight ensuing.
Yeah.
And because Rick Ross and Drake have had some beef, and because, you know, Kendrick's song is, I guess, the score or the soundtrack of this moment, media outlets get to put it on the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, or even the Rick Ross and Drake beef, when it's more about hate, actual hate, not player hating in the hip hop space, but actual hate for someone for very obvious reasons, and being able to cloak yourself in defending the country. Drake's from Toronto.
That's what I was gonna say. So watch this. If there was a rapper that was talking about like North Carolina, Petey Pablo. All right, let's pick a name. And Petey Pablo ended up having beef with somebody from another country.
And then they went to Oakland, California and got jumped. Nobody would be saying, man, that's from that Petey Pablo beef.
This is our country.
They riding for Petey Pablo.
Right.
No, fam.
Now you could make an argument. I'll be fair. You could make an argument that Canada is a lot smaller, so there might be a little bit tighter sense of community up there. I think Canada has the population of California.
Canada, however, and this is from someone who's lived there, also does not have the tribalism that we have. So it's even less likely that somebody in Vancouver was riding for Toronto, because even as the country in its entirety, they understand the idea of immigration. Mm-hmm. They're migrants all from all over the world. They don't have what our quote unquote patriots have. This is our land and you need to go back to your country. No, they're all looking at each other like we're all from somewhere else. And we're all here. So what's up? How you doing? So even that doesn't hold up if you've ever experienced Canada. You know, of course, every place in the world kind of has this thing with black people. It's not like it is in America everywhere, but there's some everywhere. Yeah. Black Americans and black people of African descent all over the world gets a little bit of a from everybody else everywhere. But Canada has an entirely different relationship with the land under their feet. Yeah. Most reasonable people, no matter what their politics are, don't have this idea that this is ours and you don't belong here. Like, no, they're all from somewhere else. They all understand that. No one's first generation Canadian. Yeah. Like, no, we all come from Scotland, from Ireland, from France, from Hungary, from Germany, from Africa, everyone there, from China, from Japan. They all have a sense of where they're really from and understand that is just now where they live. Yeah. And they don't take that personal ownership of the land where it's theirs but not yours, even though we both live here and are both from somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is, again, the thing that we don't like to see. When you see someone take an issue that is from a song, or an issue between two people, make it their issue, whether or not they're reaching, and then use that as justification for violence. We're already up against, as a culture, optics that suggest that we are prone to violence, that we are disproportionately overrepresented in criminal situations and the judicial system and so forth and so on, that we have aggressive natures and all this stuff. It's not true, but if a person wanted to make an argument based on statistics that are misinterpreted or half truths, they could do that. You know what I mean? And some do it honestly, and some people are intentionally trying to manipulate it. But, if you say, well, black people get convicted of or overrepresent, whatever crimes, then, I can make an argument that there's over-policing, that there's, meth labs and trailer parks and stuff all over the country where, outcomes are different because of race. You know what I mean? But stuff like this, that is an outpouring of a rap battle, doesn't help our case when we're up against public opinion and optics like that.
I think the responsible thing to do in our position specifically is to point out that it's just not accurate.
It's not accurate, no.
Right? Like, worrying about the backlash of created, falsified optics should not be our position where we come in here and wag our fingers and speak out against it. Like, they tried to associate a shooting that happened in Toronto to this beef. Yeah. And I'm here to tell you folks, nobody from Compton, California took their guns up across the northern border to go, and that's just not how things work. Yeah. So it's, again, I don't want us to conflate like they're doing. I won't let us conflate those things. That shooting had nothing to do with Kendrick Lamar and Drake.
So how about this?
And this fight didn't either.
So how about this? This is what I'll say. For me,
and before you interject, the violent one in this video was not the black rapper.
No, not at all.
Also important to point out.
But here's where I was going. So for me, because I know that things like this don't help the optics that do exist, they are part and parcel to our experience, for better or worse. It further turns me off to the excitement surrounding battles, rap beefs. There's no way that this long term can be constructive. Now, there was definitely a bright moment recently. I will cede that entirely for, us. You know what I mean? But you could also make the argument that that was in defense of the culture and in defense of preserving the authenticity of hip hop. I mean, the rest of it, last part, the rest of it is, there are people that battle because of 100 reasons. And if it was simply just a battle, hey, this is how I felt, I'm a better rapper, blah, 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 this, that, and the third. Okay, that's cool. But a lot of times the line between battle and beef is blurred, and beef takes battling often to a level where there's no good that will come from it. There's just no way to interpret the outcome as somehow positive, right? That was my feeling.
One thing that you've taught me, because we went from DJs to activists to journalists, and one thing that you've taught me in the journalist space is that there has to be a level of credibility to our journalist piece. So some things need to be said out loud, because again, conflation happens and it lives on forever as truth. The demise of the Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac Shakur have always been tied to their beef very subjectively. There's no actual data or fact that corroborates that. Both of their untimely demises had something to do with separate street stuff. The late, great, immortal Tupac Shakur got into a physical altercation with a known gang member in Las Vegas. Yeah. And then he was taken from us. That did not have anything to do with the Notorious B.I.G.
Yeah.
And there are even more question marks with regards to what happened to the Notorious B.I.G. But if you read enough about that, seems not to be tied to Tupac Shakur either. So the way that we lost those young kings has always just kind of loosely been tied to their very, very public rap beef.
Each other, yeah.
But if you do the investigating and read what law enforcement and those involved with trying to solve that case even still have said and reported, the way that they were taken from us did not have anything to do with what was happening to them on record. And their case is one of few that has ended in that way. Nas and Jay-Z, very famously shared stages together and have become close friends, toured the world and lifted the culture. Drake and Meek Mill united on stage and people went crazy in a very good way. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the bright spot, the pop out. So we have a lot of examples of there being positive, bright moments as a result of rap competition. Sure. It does not spill over to street as often as we think. We just have such a monumental kind of false example of that happening, where our minds now tie rap battle to beef to
let me
worst possible outcome.
I'm gonna give you two ways of interpreting the reality situation. First off, I'm glad you brought that up, because when it comes to Biggie and Tupac, that is a great example of how optics work. Black people en masse, we are fighting a number of battlefronts. Misinformation, disinformation, optics. Whether or not we are worth even having a conversation about reparations or critical race theory or affirmative action, whether or not these people will even entertain the conversation. And optics shapes public opinion, and in this country we are a minority. So whether or not Pac and Big's deaths were directly related to each other, the story goes, the optics go, that their beef had something to do with their death, right? Mm-hmm. So that's something where when I look at what happens in Vancouver, I can see there's nothing good here, right? Now, you mentioned the bright moments. I'll see those entirely. The reconciliation is always something that we'd like to see. But we cannot forget about the deaths. And those exist in the same cultural zeitgeist, perhaps more pronounced than the reconciliations, because
I didn't mean to make it.
No, I know you weren't. I know you weren't. I'm making sure that we say that.
It's just that the deaths have been tied to the music, and in almost every case, it proves that the untimely demise did not have to do with the battle part. It's just always, well, it must have been that, and then people move on as if that's objective truth.
So that's where I was going.
And in
next.
a lot of cases, it's not.
So that's where I was going next. It's a funny story, just because I happened to be listening to this yesterday. I was working on some art, and I was listening to the Insane Clown Posse and their conversation on Drink Champs, which is another, podcast, and ICP is a kind of a hip hop group, hip hop rock.
A bit of a cult following.
Yeah, cult following.
Years ago.
For those that don't know. Fans of both, by the way. I love Nori. That's my guy. Got to perform on stage with him. My favorite song. It was great. And ICP, been a fan of them for years. Never met them, but they seem like cool guys. ICP was talking about their beef with Eminem. And the story goes that ICP was on first. Eminem was trying to get on at the time. He had put their name on a flyer saying that they were invited special guests to his album release party, something like that. They found out about it after the fact, after the flyer had been printed, and he'd walked up to him. He's just Marshall at the time. He's not Eminem like we know him now. He's like, hey, so see your name on the flyer? And he's like, yeah, well, you didn't invite us. He's like, I'm inviting you now. And then they're like, get out of here, right? So Eminem got mad that they didn't do the show. So Eminem started making these diss records back in the late 90s about ICP. ICP then has to respond because, why are you calling us out, calling us all these names and stuff like that? We don't even know who you are, right? Because they didn't remember the story the way that he did or whatever. But that's what happened. They ultimately ended up remembering it, and they're good now. But they were talking about, ICP was talking about for years, what that battle beef ended up looking like on the streets. And they were saying, and Nori was agreeing, and this is something that I just kind of know to be true, is that what happens is it won't be ICP versus Eminem in a fight. It'll be
fans of each.
Fans, and it'll be
close
entourage,
or
right?
Loosely close associates.
And that's where, and those things do happen.
No, those happen.
They definitely happen.
We can't pretend that doesn't happen.
And then a personal story for those that might be longtime listeners. I have an older brother who's a rapper. He's in a group called Dilated Peoples, if you care to look them up. And once upon a time, they had a song or a remix to a song, I believe, and they had Everlast on the song. Everlast is, again, another kind of rocker from late 90s. But he switched and became Muslim, and he was still a rapper. I think he was from House of Pain or Cypress Hill or something like that. I think House of Pain is where he's from. Does a song with my brother's group, and on that song he disses, funnily enough, Eminem. He says something like, I buck a 380 at ones who act shady, something like that. Eminem and him had problems or whatever. Eminem comes back, responds to this song with D12. Okay, so one of the guys from D12 calls my brother out by name. My brother never said anything bad about Eminem, but calls my brother out and says that he's gonna choke my brother out, right? And I'm like, yo, did he just? And I'm hearing it on the radio. I heard it on Friday Night Flavors.
Of House of Pain. So you're right.
Yeah. So I heard it on the radio. I was still in college, right? So I heard it on the radio. Did that guy just say? I remember there's some guys on the radio where we ended up working with him later, but Matlox was one of the people who was debuting this diss record from D12, going at Everlast, Dilated, and so forth, right? And the fact that he said that on a song made me crazy, because it's my actual brother, and he's saying it in such a public way, and they have fans, and then people might want to hurt my big brother. And I'm like, yo, now flip this. A few months later, It might have been the Up in Smoke tour, or the Chronic. Somehow Dr. Dre was on tour. I forget the name of the tour. But this was a mega tour.
Probably Up in Smoke.
Then that's
that tour was massive.
It was a mega tour, and Exhibit was on that tour, right? So, again, longtime listeners will know, I have another older brother. All my big brothers were kind of like the guys in LA, right? So my other brother and Exhibit are super duper close. I've known Exhibit forever, right? And so Exhibit's like a family friend, you know? And obviously Rocka's my brother, and then my brother Buddy, our brother, me and Rocka's brother Buddy, is really tight with Exhibit. So this Up in Smoke tour comes to town, and I'm like, I don't know how old I was, but I was way stupider than I am now. Anyway, Exhibit's in town. My brother's like, yo, I'm gonna hit him. We'll get you guys some tickets, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then we all get connected on the phone. So I'm texting Exhibit like, hey, I'm here. Bootleg Kev was with me. So this is one of our excursions backstage in this huge stadium, getting to see all these rappers walk around backstage. So we're backstage with Exhibit, hanging out, you know, just being a part of it. When you're young, it feels like amazing to do that. Now I'm like, oh, I'm so tired, I want to go home. But at the time, it was really exciting. There was lowriders back there and everything. And I see D12 and the guys from D12, right? By the way, later on, Proof of D12 got on stage with Dilated Peoples. I was at the concert. I was on the side of the stage. I saw this happen. And I remember my brother said, on the stage, we have the proof and we have the evidence, because Evidence is another member of Dilated Peoples. And now you have the proof and the evidence that, you know, we've come together. So to your point, Q, the reconciliation did take place. It was very meaningful. And when Proof died, we were all sad by that, because Proof spent a lot of time in Arizona and he was very close with a lot of people here. And he made good with my brother, so I'm good. But at this time, I was backstage. I ended up calling Rocka, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm backstage, and there's these people back here, the D12 people, man, and I'm feeling some kind of, but, you know, you got to think, that's how protective you feel. I felt that feeling, right?
I'll share my personal story with you off air that's, you'll get a kick out of it.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, we should share it here, but anyway.
No, we won't share it here.
Okay, it might be a little too personal.
Yeah.
But anyway, my brother pleaded, he was like, Ramses, don't do anything. Don't say anything. Right now, they don't know who you are. Leave that alone. Leave it alone. He's like, we already talked to those guys, like right when the song came out. See, the public didn't catch up. He's like, we already talked to those guys right when the song came out. And then Evidence made a song back and blah, blah, blah. He's like, we talked to them back then. It's all good. I mean, we're not going to no barbecues together or nothing like that, but it's all good. I promise. It got blown out of proportion. He had a problem with one dude, and we just was on the song with him. We didn't know what he was talking about, blah, blah, it all came out. It's all good. But and obviously I wasn't about to go fight D12 with Bootleg Kev, who was at 12 at the time. Like that wasn't going to happen. But that feeling, I could see how easily something like that could come together. And that is indeed the ripple effect of celebrity, of, you know, people that are, again, gainfully employed by these rappers or otherwise stand to benefit fiscally by their continued success. That, again, that sense of pride that a community has, because I was so proud of my brother. I'm still proud of my brother. My brother, my actual big brother, is Rocka Iriscience of the Dilated Peoples. I get to say that now, despite all the things that I've done with my life. He's still my big brother. And he loves me.
And he called me little bro on FaceTime one time. So, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to go ahead and get mine out.
Yeah, go ahead and get it.
You know what I'm saying? So I could feel my little pride.
Right.
And told me he was proud of me on the FaceTime. I'm looking at his face when he said it. So, yeah.
Yeah, man. Us, both of us. But so you start to see how people feel connected to these rap beefs and these rap battles.
And he did our show, by the way. So thank you, big bro.
Yeah. But when people feel connected to these battles, you can see it end up looking like this video that Rick Ross was captured in. And this is the phenomenon that I reject.
I'll say this as my kind of final point with regards to this topic. The Vietnam War was in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Photojournalists risked their lives to go over there, to take pictures and to capture imagery of what was happening in that war so that they could show it to people over here in hopes that people would be outraged, in hopes that people would be afraid, in hopes that people would push back on the legitimacy and the necessity of that war that was happening.
Yeah.
And it worked. The battling, the competition, the violence, the drug use, the misogyny, all of the negative aspects of our music, our blues, Tupac once said, was the same as what they were trying to do with Vietnam. People need to see how we have to survive. That need to be the alpha comes from this primal need to survive. There are limited resources. There is limited money. There is limited opportunity. I'm the one. This need to express ourselves in that manner is supposed to shine a light on our plight. Now, these men are saying these things as millionaires already and having already reached kind of the pinnacle of their careers. But it does not change the circumstance that we were born in that creates not just these type of men, but this type of art. So I don't want to tear down or point negatively at any aspect of hip hop, because all of it is necessary. The way we paint the pictures, the way that we tell the stories, the way that we highlight our victories, and the way that we point out the things that we should not be proud of, they are still very much a part of our story, of our existence, and of our creativity. So I do not want to besmirch or judge these men throughout the history of this art who have engaged in battle by simply trying to say, no, no, no. I'm not the two, I'm the one. Because it's always felt like when you're us that you have to do that. I wish there was more Ramses and Q. I wish there was more me saying, more someone saying, nah, fam, you the king, and you saying, nah, fam, that's you. I wish there was more of that. However, we cannot ignore the circumstances that we were born into
reality,
that have created both. Those who join hands and uplift one another, and those who feel like in order for me to be okay and in order for mine to be okay, you can't be.
Yeah, I got to get up for
you know. So it's a sad truth, but all of that is a part of our story arc and a part of our lives. So when we create, that comes out as well.
Well, I rarely can say you're wrong. I don't know if I ever have. I'm not going to start today. You're not wrong. And of course, as always, we'd like to hear from you. So let's keep the conversation going. How do you feel about beefs and battles in hip hop? You can reach out to me. I'm on all social media at Ramses Ja.
I am Q Ward on all socials as well. Do not forget the Red Microphone Talkback feature.
Yeah.
That is always my favorite part of listening to you close our episodes that we get to do together.
And if you're listening on iHeart, use the Red Microphone Talkback feature and let us know how you feel. Let's keep the conversation going. Hopefully we'll hear from you soon. And until we do,
peace.
This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show is produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the Red Microphone Talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Ja, on all social media. Join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice from our perspective, right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.